Welcome to Restricted Access Live. We'll be taking an in-depth look at the cases that we've been covering over this month and hearing further analysis from the team behind the show. I'm your host, Chris, and I'll let the team introduce themselves, starting with the show's creator, Mark.
Well, hi, my name is Mark, and I'm from the Czech Republic, and I do mainly the video editing for the show and also a little bit of, you can say, project management, I think. All right, go on, Marri.
Hi, I'm Marri, and I am from the United States in Pennsylvania, and I am a video analyst and researcher on the show.
Hey guys, I'm Sam. I'm from Oklahoma in the United States. I am one of the researchers, and I also do a lot of the graphic design work.
Hi, I'm Tenille. I'm from London, England. I am one of the writers, and sometimes I contribute artwork.
Hi, I'm Tobias. I live in Wisconsin in the USA, and I mostly contribute through script writing.
Hey guys, I'm Ethan. I'm from Vancouver Island, and I'm one of the scriptwriters here for Restricted Access.
So the first case that we're going to be looking at is the Mothman case. There's been quite a few interesting things sort of buzzing around on Reddit after that.
Oh, sure. This has been a huge case, and it's something that I've been researching actively for my own personal Fortean journalism website, the Singular Fortean Society. So actually, what's funny, if you don't mind me just interjecting here, there continue to be sightings of this bat-like creature in Chicago. The most recent one here really just took place about a week or so ago. Let's see, it was June 23rd. Yet another couple, I think they were out having dinner or something. It's just something completely mundane, and that's actually a hallmark of these sightings, which sort of lends an air of credibility to me. It's literally people just sort of going about their business, and they'll look up or something, and they see this 7-foot tall bat thing just flying overhead. So it's interesting stuff. I could talk all day about it. I'm kind of interested to know what you guys think. On one thing specifically, too, and this wasn't mentioned in the episode. This is a theory that I've sort of been investigating after that. I think somebody had brought it up. Actually, a few people have brought it up at this point to me. And it's people are starting to blame this on some sort of, prankster or hoaxer, but not that the people who are seeing something are making anything up, but rather that somebody could have attached like a Halloween costume or something to a drone and are literally just flying it around Chicago, scaring the crap out of people. So that's the newest theory that I've heard, and I'm kind of interested to hear everybody's take on it.
The thing is, from what I remember, people were saying that they heard the wings flapping and things like that. They wouldn't hear that if it was a drone or something like that. I think it's a real living thing that flaps its wings.
Also, how much can a drone even carry? Like, I thought they had a pretty limited lift.
Well, they've had some drones that have shown up before that you can actually see them. They're like prank videos on YouTube where one of them looks like a specter or a witch. They just have to be made of really, really lightweight material.
Yeah, and actually, when you see those things from a distance coming in, it can actually look quite terrifying, quite genuine at first. Especially the whole idea of drones just being out and about is still a new thing. You might not automatically assume that some shape flying towards you is going to be a drone.
Well, one thing that Mark had said was the sound of wings flapping wouldn't be really congruent with a drone. But in those same videos that I was just talking about, those pranks, they've got it hooked up with a speaker. So, I mean, they could facilitate that noise, but one thing that they couldn't easily do, at least from what I've researched and from what Marri has researched drone cases that we've had so far, they couldn't really create anything that have a flying-type motion. That mechanism would throw off the balance.
Yeah, it's an interesting theory, I think, and while it could explain a handful of the sightings, it certainly doesn't. It doesn't explain the stranger sightings, where people will report seeing this thing sort of up close and personal. One comes to mind. There was a young lady out walking her dog in Oz Park, I think, and she'd actually seen this thing, whatever it was, on the ground, and then saw its wings, unfurl, and it just shoots up into the air. And the fear that this sighting caused her, it was real. And I don't think that, I don't think you could recreate that with a drone. But I actually, just sort of segueing into the other sort of mundane explanation I'm hearing too, like, even if it was a misidentification of a large owl or something, for instance, I mean, because there's no way you're not going to get a bat that big in the Midwestern United States, but it's possible it could be a larger barn owl or something. I mean, they can get a couple feet tall, like they can be big and scary if you see it briefly, but these witnesses aren't applying their own narrative, like they're literally reporting these cases, and what they're saying is, hey, I saw something, this is what it looked like, and that's really the end of it. I mean, and as somebody who has done a good bit of investigating and interviewing witnesses, I will tell you that is pretty rare. Most times, like, let's say, you're interviewing a UFO witness, most of the time they're going to tell you what they think it is, and it's always something weird. But these people aren't doing that, which it really lends an air of credibility to me, because if it was just an animal or something, they probably wouldn't even bother to report it. The experience is weirder to them than that. So, I don't know. I would love to hear what you guys think, honestly.
Well, interestingly, but I don't know how relevant it is. On Twitter a few days ago, there was a potential UFO sighting in Chicago as well. It was a set of just 3 flashing lights that flew over someone's house very quickly. But it does seem like there's sort of an increased amount of odd activity.
As for being like an owl, owls are native to Chicago, like the great snowy owl, which can get like 3 feet big, which is huge for an owl. But sure, there is, of course, that owls have a special design to their wing which muffles it, so you wouldn't really hear the flap of the wings particularly. I mean, they make some noise, but not a lot.
It's more of a flump.
They make more of a woof woof rather than a flap like most birds. So it's really a strange sound. If you get a chance to hear it, it doesn't quite sound like normal wings. So that kind of leads me a little away from owls being the culprit, even though many of these sightings do seem to resemble owls.
Mm-hmm. That and owls, whenever they're around, if they're that active, at least in this area of the United States, they have a tendency to be really loud. They'll screech.
Yeah, owls make this ungodly noise.
Another hypothesis that people on Reddit were talking about was that it's all made up, that it's all a part of a viral campaign for the new Mothman documentary. So what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, honestly, it's funny. I've gotten some of that myself, where people will say like, hey, how come we only see this reported on your site? And I'm like, look, I'm sorry, I'm so great at search engine optimization that when you Google this, you see like 3 or 4 articles that I've written, but I promise it's not, it's not just on there. Other people have been reporting on this, and to speak specifically to the idea that it's some sort of viral marketing campaign, I can see how that's an attractive theory. I mean, I really can. In the internet age, stuff like that happens all the time. But I will say that I interviewed Lon Strickler, and he's an investigator out of Pennsylvania. He's sort of been coordinating a lot of the investigative efforts in Chicago for this thing. And he has his own website, Phantoms and Monsters, and in the interview, I had mentioned that specifically because it's something people are talking about, and he knows the guy. Or guys, I guess, that are making this documentary. It's a smaller production company called Small Town Monsters. They actually do a bunch of fantastic, Fortean documentaries on all kinds of monsters, whatever. But yeah, he's convinced. He knows these guys. He's like they wouldn't do this, frankly, and when he says that, I believe him. I mean. This Fortean community is too small for people to really get away with something like that. Like everybody sort of knows everybody. We're all only 1, maybe 2 at the most degrees of separation away from each other. So again, I get why people would think that, but if my anecdotal conversation with Lon Strickler means anything to anybody, I just don't buy it. I don't think it's happening.
And we often find as well when we're looking into these kind of things that when there is kind of a marketing company behind it, some kind of viral thing, it's usually very easy to expose. You find it very quickly by tracing sort of the sources back. We've looked at a few things and we've tried to get in touch with people and found out that it's being managed by like a marketing company or something. It's it does reveal itself very quickly.
Absolutely. I mean, you can look at the, Jamie Massons and the Tom Biscardis of the world, and everybody knows that they're frauds. It's well-known fact. I mean, people don't get away with this for very long. It just doesn't happen.
I think one of the things that keeps Mothman going, though, is just the sort of classic prophecy of doom thing. It seems to be people that are more susceptible to seeing things when that narrative is behind it, because we all like to sort of imagine or try and figure out what's going to happen, and I think that's what's driving people to associate these sightings with the whole Mothman thing, is that it draws everyone together in that sort of wider narrative of what's happening.
Do you mean as far as, because the Point Pleasant case back in 66 and 67, culminated in the collapse famously of the Silver Bridge at the time. So like, were you speaking specifically to people speculating on the nature of some, possibly upcoming catastrophe? Because I have heard a ton of that so far.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of rumblings. I think on some of our videos and sort of the discussions that were going around on various forums and Reddit, that there's always several people sort of bringing it all back to that point. And I think that's what drives it. It makes it very different to kind of like a cryptid sighting that some people are interested in, some people just write it off. I think that this brings in so many different groups, brings in the conspiracy theorists, and it brings in the cryptid guys, and I don't know. I think Mothman appeals to a wider group, and once it's sort of settled into the psyche, I think people are going to see it more. I think there's going to be more and more sightings of this.
Well, it's a bit like when people read their horoscopes. It's sort of people will find a meaning for it for themselves, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But if people sort of make these connections for themselves, and they're happy to do that, I think Mothman works sort of across the board on that respect.
It would be interesting to see if there is some kind of incident in that area, whether suddenly the sightings would die down afterwards.
Yeah, traditionally the Mothman is connected to Doomsday, because of the whole collapse of the bridge, the Mothman prophecies, if you will. And so if it's tied to some sort of disaster, and this really is the cryptid Mothman, what disaster is this leading up to?
Although I will say it is Chicago, and terrible things happen there all the time. And so, if something happens, yeah, it would be really easy to say, hey, look, Chicago Mothman, like we called it, this was going to happen. But,
True, self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right, I think we need to move on to our next case now. Okay, so the next case that we're going to be looking at is the Bermuda UFO.
This one was actually a really interesting one to work on because I've never seen anything like that. It is definitely not digitally manipulated to the best of my knowledge. I think we viewed things a little differently than other people did, but all in all, we had a lot of work on trying to figure all this out. That is a weird thing.
Yeah, because it kind of it moves seamlessly, doesn't it? And you see it sort of moves down to the sea, the water level, and that's where I was sort of
slows down, but everything's very consistent.
Yeah, but there's, like we mentioned it in the video, there's no splashing, there's no transition between the two forces of being in the air and in the water, even if it even does touch the water.
Yeah, which is why it leads me to think that it's not touching the water and that it's instead being obscured by something that's changing its thermal appearance and masking it. Possibly waves or some other like mist or heat raising, I don't know, but I don't really think that it's in any way touching the water. It's not showing any signs whatsoever of disturbing the water.
Well, and on top of that, it doesn't decelerate at all.
Yeah, it doesn't decelerate. It keeps its speed and just keeps going, and nothing could do that and obey the laws of physics. And I'm sorry, aliens still have to obey the laws of physics.
Right, it's just not feasible.
Does anyone have any sort of counter ideas to it being a UFO?
My first, I'm just looking at the video right now, and honestly, it almost looks to me, it could be almost like a shadow of an aircraft flying by. You know what I mean? And it just, the angle of it might be a little bit weird. The way it disappears is definitely weird, but it almost to me looks like a shadow just being cast onto the water.
Shadows won't show up in a thermal camera. This is a thermal camera that I think, was it the Coast Guard was taking video of? They're using a very high-tech thermal camera, and shadows don't show up in thermal cameras.
Technically, it was infrared, but it had some thermal capabilities, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, infrared.
I think there were also pilots that said that they saw a red light flying above the airport or something like that. So if it was a shadow,
and it was also caught on radar.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and also shadow with one light source being the sun, it wouldn't duplicate like it did at the end of the video.
Well, I think we settled on it being just the glitch in the video.
I really do think that's artifacting.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing has the appearance of an overlay anyway. And I know that we've said there's no digital manipulation there, but it's kind of got that motion, hasn't it, of like an overlay object that's semi-transparent, the way it moves.
Yeah, not so much digital manipulation, so much as a digital glitch in the system for the most.
What's interesting is the fact that it didn't have any sort of you couldn't see any sources of energy sources, any sort of external ignition sources. Like it was the same colorscape across the whole thing, and I thought that was just because for me, like it could have been an albatross, it could have been a plane, anything, but it was the fact that you couldn't see like any combustion engines or anything, and that for me sort of tipped it over into the more interesting category.
It's just like a sphere, isn't it? It's like a round shape.
Yeah,
I noticed too, like the camera is panning, like it follows the object, right? It's panning as it's following the object. Could that be as a result of the camera panning, like when you say artifacting?
Or like a motion blur kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't think that it would also show up on radar, and if it was just artifacting.
But could it? I mean, I think what we're saying is, could it be something else that did show up on radar, but the way we're seeing it through this footage, we're seeing the artifacting, and it's changing our perspective of what it could be.
That is entirely possible. I honestly don't know enough about infrared cameras to say yes or no to that.
Generally speaking, though, if we're just kind of going off of general knowledge of the way that other cameras act, if it's panning kind of left to right like it is, then the artifacting should be on a horizontal plane, not vertical plane like it is, at least whenever it duplicates.
Right.
I think it's time we move on to the final case now, the thylacine episode, which is, I know, something that we've all really enjoyed looking at, and I know Marri's got some stuff she wants to say about it as well.
Oh yeah, there's some incorrect things about that first video on both parts, and I take full responsibility because I didn't read the script, and that's all my bad. I'm sorry, but neither of the creatures in the first video are in any way capable of being thylacine. The biggest giveaway is their tails. They both have poofy tails. The first one has a gait like a dog, not like a thylacine would have. And so I would say it's either a domestic dog or a dingo. It's because the way the tail wags back and forth, the bounce of its steps. Thylacine tails don't wag, they're very stiff, and they don't bounce as they walk like that. They have a rolling gait. Think of it more like a kangaroo that walks on all fours. That'd be a much closer idea of a thylacine. And the other one is probably a fox, in all likelihood a red fox, because that's the most common of the feral foxes in Australia. But the body shape and the tail and the gait are entirely wrong for a thylacine.
Yeah, as I was reading up on that, I think those are both most likely exactly what is in that video, frankly. I know especially red foxes they're just everywhere. They're in like the top 5 of Australia's like most bothersome invasive species at this point, which I had no idea about. Apparently that's a huge thing in Australia. So yeah, I mean, I think Marri pretty much nailed it there.
And it's a shame because I think we all agree that the thylacine is something we'd like to have around. Just amazing looking creatures, weren't they?
Yeah, with both with the footage that came out, I feel like saying I want to believe them, and I think that they are still there, but I don't think either of those footage were them. But good on them for trying.
Yeah, we have to accept the horrible fact that this is what people do. We pick things that we don't like, and we wipe them out, and that's what's probably happened here with the thylacine. So
the thing about those thylacines too is that, I mean, if we're gonna find an actual cryptozoological creature, like they're way up there as far as there being a real chance that they're still out there. I mean, there are mainstream scientists who take this subject very, very seriously. Like, this isn't nearly as far out as a lot of the things that we cover. I would say.
I would second that, just because if I cannot remember the exact name of it, but I'm pretty sure it was an Indian elephant or an Indonesian elephant. But I brought it up to Mark before. We were convinced that we had wiped them out, an elephant species. And they were recently within the past probably decade, but we found them again on an island in Indonesia.
And if I may bring up the cryptozoological favorite, the mountain gorilla, which everyone thought was wiped out, but it was I think it was the 70s. It was only discovered, and no one knew about it before then. So these things happen.
So there is real hope that we'll be able to have pet thylacines in the future. That's good.
They're actually really good candidates for domestication just because of their personality and temperament. So, hey, I'm a big animal guy. I would have a thylacine.
You guys can have your thylacine. I'm still going to hold out for my woolly mammoth.
The technical term is a Lazarus species, one that's been thought to be extinct. It's named after the story in the Bible of Jesus bringing back Lazarus from the dead.
Yeah, and we do discover sort of smaller species all the time as well. We do discover insects and small mammals and birds and all kinds of things. So, I mean, it could just be a matter of time, hopefully.
I hope so.
Did you all happen to see that other video that I had posted about the thylacine that we didn't actually run? Because that's a really good long shot of a creature that I swear it looks exactly like a thylacine.
I agree. I really wish we had included that one. If the tail is correct on that one, the only thing is we can't judge the gait because the poor thing was injured, so it was hobbling really bad.
Is that something we could show now, Mark?
Yeah, it's on screen right now. Don't worry. I just wanted to say something about the second video with the striped creature in the corner. I think, to be honest, in my opinion, it can be just about anything. You can take any video that you want, pick one thing in the video, and say, "Hey, this is a thylacine."
Oh yeah, definitely. I think Tobias covers that in the. We compare it with the Bandicoot, don't we?
Well, yeah,
because it has a stripe section.
Like a half of like some creature's butt to work with in that video. It's not a whole lot.
Through all of our study, we have narrowed it down to it is either a thylacine or it's not.
Or any creature.
Right. Yes, in my scientific opinion, it either is or is not.
Well, it's some kind of butt. We know that.
It's definitely a butt.
Right, I think that's our time up. So thank you very much for tuning in and listening to us. We hope to bring more of this kind of analysis each month now. We'll be going over our cases and bringing you sort of extra things. We sometimes discover new footage or new angles after the episodes have gone live, and that is going to give us a chance to kind of discuss that and go over those things again.
Bye, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.